It started as a road trip. I had a long weekend, no obligations, and a gnawing urge to get out of the city. That kind of bone-deep restlessness that builds up from fluorescent lights, car horns, and digital noise. So I packed a bag, fueled the car, and hit the road with nothing but an overcooked playlist and my phone mounted to the dashboard. The Navigator app was always my silent co-pilot. Never questioned it. Never thought to. It had never failed me. But somewhere around the second hour, cruising through the softer parts of the countryside, past those low, hunched trees and fence posts leaning like old men, I saw something strange on the map. A blank. Not a lake. Not a forest. Just nothing. A smudged gray blob in the middle of all that rural sprawl. It wasn't big, but it was noticeable. Especially because every other inch of land around it had markers, road names, creeks, trailheads, gas stations. This patch was just empty, like someone had dragged an eraser across it. Curiosity tugged at me. I tapped the screen to zoom in. Still nothing. No details. No road lines even touching the edge. But there was one stretch of highway that ran close to it, Route 190, about 20 minutes from where I was. If I took a small detour off the main road, I could get close. I told myself I was just stretching my legs. Exploring. But I already knew I was going in. I took the next exit onto a smaller road. 2 lanes, cracked tar seams, the occasional farmhouse off in the fields. The kind of road that doesn't see much traffic, especially on a weekday afternoon. As I veered off the main highway, the sky dimmed slightly, though the weather app said clear skies all day. Just a faint overcast filter, like the light had been dialed back one notch without warning. I glanced at the Navigator. It adjusted, recalculated. The route flickered once, then again. For a split second, the map glitched, and the gray spot pulsed like a bruise under the screen. Then it stabilized, giving me a new route that looped around it. But I didn't want to loop around. There was a barely visible service road branching off the highway. It wasn't labeled on the map at all, but in real life, it was there, a gravel path, half swallowed by weeds, with a dented sign that had once said something, now rusted to illegibility. I slowed. Checked the mirror. No cars behind me. No cars in front either. The voice from the Navigator didn't say anything. Just silence. The arrow on the screen hovered uncertainly. No road, no name, just a floating triangle over void. Still, I turned. The tires crunched onto the gravel, and the road narrowed almost instantly, trees pressing in from both sides. It was oddly quiet. Not just country quiet, but unnaturally so. No birdsong. No wind in the leaves. Just the subtle hum of the engine and the occasional chirp of my tires over loose stone. I'd driven on forgotten roads before. Backwoods, dead-end ones. But this felt different. This felt wrong in a way I couldn't yet name. A few minutes in, the GPS froze. The screen went static white for a moment, then returned, but now the location marker had stopped moving. It thought I was standing still, even though the car kept rolling forward. I tapped the phone a few times, trying to wake it up like it was just being lazy. No dice. The blue arrow stayed rooted in place, like I'd parked on the side of the road and never moved again. The signal bars were gone. No LT. No Wi-Fi. No service at all. Not even that pitiful emergency calls only message. Just the ghost of a connection where something used to be. I wasn't that far from town. Maybe 20 miles, tops. I should have still had something. I turned the phone off and back on. Same result. The screen lit up, unlocked, and showed me the map frozen in that same spot. The road behind me, a gray blur ahead. I wasn't scared yet. Just annoyed. Technology fails. It happens. I told myself I'd keep going another 10, 15 minutes, then turn back if things didn't look promising. Maybe I'd find a sign or a landmark, maybe a gas station where someone could tell me what this place was supposed to be. But the road didn't give up any signs. Just kept curling through the trees like it wasn't meant to be found, narrowing further every mile. At some point I realized the gravel had turned into a fine dirt, light gray and smooth, like ash. And then a fork. No markers. No signs. One path continued straight, a little narrower. The other veered right, toward a thinning in the trees where I could see the suggestion of open space, fields, maybe. Something in me didn't want to go right. Don't ask me why. But I did. The trees peeled away. The road broadened slightly. And there, in the near distance, was the first sign of life I'd seen since I left the main highway. A cluster of buildings, faded and still, resting quietly in the middle of nowhere. A town. Not on the map. It wasn't a large town. More like a hamlet. A single main street, maybe 5 or 6 blocks long, lined with small, neat buildings, a post office, what looked like a diner, a church with a spindly steeple. Houses sat politely behind trimmed hedges and white fences. Every lawn was cut, every porch broom-swept. Too neat. Too still. I slowed as I entered. No welcome sign, no population count, no name carved into a weathered plank above the road. Not even a blinking yellow light. But everything was pristine. Preserved. Like it had been built for a brochure, and then sealed in amber. I pulled the car to a stop in front of what might have been a general store. The windows were clean, but the lights were off. No sign in the window, no store hours posted. Just glass, and behind it, neat shelves of dusty-looking cans and boxes. I stepped out of the car. The sound of the door shutting seemed too loud. It bounced off the buildings and came back to me, flat and dull. No echo. Just a deadened thump in the empty air. The street was empty. Not abandoned, just empty. No cars. No people. No dogs barking in the distance. The trees around the edge of town barely moved, as if held in place. I walked to the sidewalk, half expecting someone to come out and ask if I was lost. But the houses sat silent, shutters open, curtains still. It felt like stepping onto a stage set waiting for actors to arrive. I pulled out my phone again. Still no signal. I took a photo of the main street, just to prove to myself later that this wasn't some dream. The shutter clicked. But when I looked at the image, something was off. The photo showed the street exactly as it was, but with a difference. In the far left of the frame, near the edge of a white house, was a figure. A person. Watching me. My eyes shot up from the screen. There was no one there. Just the white house, quiet and clean, its porch empty, its windows blank. I stared hard at the spot where the figure had appeared in the photo. Nothing moved. No breeze. No footsteps. No echo of a door closing. But in the image, frozen on my screen, it had been there. A person. Slight frame. Wearing something pale, maybe a long coat, or a dress. Too far to make out a face. Just standing still, like they'd been watching me from a distance when the photo was taken. I blinked. Turned in a slow circle. Still no one. I started walking. Not fast. Just enough to keep the tension from locking my legs up. I crossed the street to the diner, peered through the windows. Empty. Booths perfectly arranged, salt and pepper shakers filled, not a single crumb on any table. Like it had closed 5 minutes ago. Or like no one had ever eaten there, ever. I knocked on the glass. Nothing. No flicker of movement. Then I caught sight of something that made my stomach twist. A car. Parked beside the diner. Old, maybe late 90s. Dusty, like everything else here. But it had something in the back seat. A shape. I crept closer. Careful. There was a child's car seat in the back. A faded plush bear on the floorboard. But no driver. No keys. No sign of recent use. I tried the door. Locked. And for a brief, 6-second, I swore I could hear faint music. Just a whisper of it, something teeny and cheerful, like a lullaby playing on loop from inside the locked car. Then it was gone. I backed away slowly, mouth dry, pulse tapping at my ears. This place wasn't abandoned. It wasn't alive either. It was something in between. And I just walked straight into the middle of it. I kept walking. Further into the town, past buildings that looked more like props the longer I stared at them. Everything looked right, roofs intact, flower beds tended, fresh paint on shutters, but none of it felt right. There was no smell of grass or exhaust. No buzz of insects. Just a faint antiseptic smell, like air that had been filtered too many times. Then, finally, I saw someone. A man. Late middle age. Gray at the temples. Wearing a pale blue shirt tucked into dark slacks. He was kneeling beside a hedge in front of a house, trimming it with hand clippers and steady, robotic snips. Snip. 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 I nearly shouted with relief. I jogged over. Hey! Excuse me! He didn't look up. I stopped a few feet away. Sorry to bother you. I think I'm a little lost. My phone's not working and… Nothing. He kept clipping the hedge slowly, precisely, as if I weren't even there. I stepped closer, into his peripheral vision. Still no reaction. It was like watching a mannequin animate only one part of itself. I waved a hand. Hello? Sir? He paused. For a second, I thought he was about to turn his head. Instead, he stood, turned around, and walked directly into the house without so much as glancing at me. Not hurried. Not startled. Just done. The front door clicked shut behind him. I stood there, mouth half open. From another block away, I heard the soft creak of another door. I turned to look. A woman stepped onto her porch. Long gray dress, white apron. She looked toward me, no, through me, and slowly sat in the rocking chair. Then began to rock. Not fast. Just enough to make the floorboards groan. Rock. Pause. Rock. She never looked in my direction again. I moved on. Slowly. Like if I walked too fast, the whole place might peel back and show me something I wasn't ready to see. The deeper I went, the more people I noticed. They weren't hidden. They weren't missing. They were just detached. A boy sat on the steps of what looked like a schoolhouse, legs dangling, eyes fixed on the ground like he was waiting for a bell that would never ring. A pair of women stood at a bus stop, side by side, holding empty purses. Neither spoke. Neither blinked. They weren't statues. I could see them breathing. But they didn't respond. I passed a man standing outside a barber shop, holding a broom he never used. His hands were gripping it just tight enough to whiten the knuckles. His eyes followed me, but he didn't move. Didn't speak. Just watched. No one ever came close. No one asked who I was, or why I was there. And the more I looked around, the more I realized something worse. There were no birds. No animals. Not even insects. No sound except for the breeze, which itself felt wrong, too smooth, too controlled, like it was being piped in from some hidden machine. I checked my phone again. Dead. I tried restarting it again. This time it wouldn't even turn on. I was off the grid. Completely. And then I noticed something even more unsettling. There were no clocks. Not on the church tower. Not in the diner. Not even on my car's dash. When I glanced back through the window, the digital readout was blank. It was like time didn't matter here. Or maybe, like it wasn't allowed. I should have left. Every part of me was screaming it by now. But the thing is, I wasn't sure how. The road I'd come in on seemed to fade behind me. I walked back toward where I thought I'd parked, trying to trace my steps. The houses all looked the same now, symmetrical hedges, matching porches, the same color paint. Like someone had copied and pasted an entire neighborhood block. I passed the corner store I swore I'd already seen. Then I saw it again. Same crack in the front window. Same potted plant, wilted and slightly off-center. Same hand-lettered sign taped to the glass, closed until further notice. I turned left instead of right this time. Walked 3 more blocks. There it was again. The store. Every direction led back to it. I stopped, heart punching against my ribs. My mouth was dry. My hands were slick with sweat. Okay, I thought, calm down. GPS glitches. People act weird. Doesn't mean I'm trapped in some Twilight Zone rerun. I backed away and turned sharply, only to nearly collide with someone standing behind me. It was the same man from earlier. The hedge trimmer. Except now he was holding nothing. Just standing there, arms limp at his sides, staring at me with a hollow expression. Not confusion. Not concern. Just presence. Like he'd been placed there for a reason. I took a step back. And then he spoke. One word. Flat. Mechanical. Almost like a recording. Turn. I didn't move. What? His eyes twitched slightly. He opened his mouth again. But instead of repeating himself, he said something that chilled me straight to the marrow. You've been here before. I stared at him, unable to form words. I've never been here, I said finally, my voice too loud, too shaky. This place wasn't even on the map. The man didn't respond. His head tilted, just slightly, like he was listening for something behind me. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. Slow. Purposeful. Down the middle of the street, back toward the hedges. I stood frozen, heart hammering. My brain trying to rationalize. He was confused. Mistaken. Some guy with dementia. Right. Except he'd said it so clearly. You've been here before. And deep down, in a part of me I didn't want to look at too closely, I felt a flicker of something worse than fear. Recognition. I turned around and started walking. Not toward the car. Just away. Every street I tried felt the same. Repeating loops. Houses that doubled back. Stores I couldn't escape. I passed a hardware shop with a busted light fixture, and then passed it again. And again. Sometimes with the lights still broken. Sometimes fixed. It was like the town was trying to reset itself, but kept glitching halfway through. I turned one last corner and froze. There was a bulletin board nailed to the side of a brick building. Like the kind towns used to post community events or yard sales. But instead of notices, it was covered in photos. Old photos. All black and white. Curled edges. Faces of people in outdated clothes, staring dead-on into the lens. Some smiling. Some not. Dozens of them. Hundreds. And right in the middle, one showed me. Younger, maybe by 5 years. Standing on a street I didn't recognize. Holding a coffee cup, mid-step, half turning toward the camera. It was me. But I'd never taken that picture. I stared at the photo, mouth dry as cotton. My fingers trembled as I reached out and touched it. The texture was real, paper, worn by time and thumbtacks. I pulled the photo off the board and turned it over. No writing. No date. No note. Just a blank, slightly yellowed back. I looked closer at the buildings behind me in the image. Not the same as the ones in this town. Slight differences, roof lines, signs. But there was the same feeling to them. That too clean, too quiet stillness. Like maybe the place in the photo wasn't here. But it wasn't not here either. I checked the other photos. One after the other, more faces. Some of them seemed recent, despite the black and white. A man in a hoodie with earbuds. A woman with a phone in her hand. But all of them had the same expression, a blankness, or a moment just before confusion. Like they hadn't realized yet they were being watched. Or remembered. I kept flipping. Then I saw it again. Me. Different pose. Sitting on a bench, same coffee cup, head down like I was checking my phone. This time, behind me, barely in focus, stood the same woman I'd seen in the first photo I took when I arrived. The one near the White House. Pale dress. Just there. I dropped the photo. A wave of nausea washed over me, sudden and sharp. I stumbled back from the bulletin board. The world tilted slightly. The air felt thinner. When I looked up, the street had changed. Same layout, but now the shadows had moved. Wrongly. Like the sun had skipped across the sky when I blinked. And I wasn't alone anymore. 3 people stood across the street, perfectly spaced. Staring. Not saying anything. just watching. I turned and walked fast, too fast, probably, but they didn't follow. I didn't look back. My legs moved on instinct, cutting through alleys, between houses, across lawns too perfect to be real. Every corner I turned just brought more quiet, more eerie symmetry. I passed a fountain in a roundabout I knew I hadn't seen before, though it looked like it had been there forever. Clean, clear, coins glinting faintly in the water. I sat on the fountain's edge, gripping the phone even though it was useless. I tried to remember why I came here in the first place. It had started with a blank spot on a map. A missing name. Curiosity. Stupid. I opened the photo gallery again. My hands were shaking. I scrolled back, hoping maybe, just maybe, the GPS had tagged something earlier. Some coordinates. A name. Nothing. Worse than nothing. Every photo I'd taken today, including the first shot of the street, was gone. But there were other photos there now. Ones I didn't take. My face in them. In different clothes. Different seasons. One in the snow. One with leaves turning orange. One standing in front of that same bulletin board, 5, 6 times over, as if I'd been here before. Dozens of times. I backed out of the gallery. Checked my map app again. The screen flashed. Then stabilized. Now there was a label over the gray area. It just said, Null Zone Obsolete. Underneath that, in smaller text, Deprecated Sector. Do not reference. The hairs on my arms stood up. I tapped the label. Nothing happened. I zoomed out, trying to orient myself. But the map just smeared, like digital ink run underwater. No roads. No cities. Just one patch of gray expanding slowly outward. Like it was erasing everything else. I dropped the phone. Just let it fall screen up, where the fountain's base met the stone. I couldn't even bring myself to pick it back up. It felt like touching it would somehow draw me deeper in, like the device itself was part of whatever was keeping me here. I stood and looked around. The town was unchanged, in that way it always was, but something felt different now. Subtly warped. The lines of the buildings no longer aligned cleanly. Windows leaned a bit wrong. Colors felt too sharp, then suddenly faded, like the environment couldn't decide how it wanted to present itself. I tried walking again. South, I thought. I hadn't tried due south. I followed a long stretch of road that felt more rural. Trees started to appear again, the houses thinning out. It gave me hope. A kind of half-light was bleeding through the sky now, like dusk arriving too early. Eventually, I saw it, a road sign. Battered, bent slightly. It said, "Thanks for visiting. Come again soon." No town name. No route number. Just that cheerful lie. And past it? Trees. Thick ones? Too thick. I pressed forward anyway. Walked 30 minutes through woods that felt more like wallpaper than nature. No bird calls, no rustling leaves, just the same 5 trees repeating like a side-scrolling background. The ground didn't crunch. My boots left no marks. Then, a clearing. And just beyond it, a paved road. The road. The same stretch of gravel where I'd first turned off Route 190. My car was there, parked neatly at the edge. Exactly where I'd left it. Only the windshield was cracked. And there were leaves on the hood, wet, dark, too many to have gathered in just a few hours. I approached slowly. Opened the door. The interior was cold. Dusty. The air smelled faintly like mildew. Like the car had been sitting there for weeks. I reached for the keys in the ignition, and found them gone. There was a note tucked into the driver's seat. Just 4 words. "You never really left." I staggered back from the car, my breath fogging in the air now, though it wasn't cold. My pulse thundered in my neck like something big was chasing me, even though the woods stayed still, silent as always. I held the note in my hand, but it didn't feel like paper. It was too stiff, too smooth. Almost like plastic. Laminated. I flipped it over. The back was blank, except for a faded stamp in the corner. A seal of some kind, circular, with a code around the edge SysRST 027401. No part of this made sense. I wandered back toward town, legs moving because standing still felt worse. And yet, the more I walked, the more the place seemed to recognize me. The people I'd seen earlier? They were back. Positioned slightly differently now, but always watching. Always still. As if they'd just been moved by an unseen hand while I was gone. And then, I saw the diner again. The door was open now. I hadn't noticed it before. No creak, no sound. It had simply opened. I approached slowly, the air colder near the threshold. Inside, everything was still perfectly arranged. But on the nearest table, someone had set out something new. A photo album. Just sitting there, centered on the red vinyl tabletop. I didn't want to open it. I did anyway. The pages were filled with snapshots of me. But not just here, in other places. My old apartment. A park I used to jog in. Grocery stores. Office lobbies. Somehow, every page showed me in moments I didn't remember being photographed. And on the bottom right corner of each photo, there was a date and a timestamp. But every date ended the same way. Final location null. I flipped through the album with shaking fingers, my own face staring back at me over and over. The timestamps weren't just random. They lined up with places I'd actually been. Vacations. Grocery runs. A late-night drive 2 summers ago when I couldn't sleep. All of it there, captured, catalogued, like someone had been documenting my movements for years. And they all ended with that same phrase. Final location null. My hands started to sweat so badly I left smudges on the plastic photo sleeves. One of the last photos was of me standing at a gas station I'd stopped at just before I took the detour here. The timestamp was today. Just hours ago. And at the very bottom of the page, written in what looked like ink, but was faintly pixelated on closer inspection, was something new. Cycle confirmed. Return to initialization point. A soft ding broke the silence. The lights in the diner flickered on. Outside, the people had shifted again. They were standing closer. Not moving, but closer. Filling the windows. The man from the hedge. The woman in the rocking chair. The boy on the schoolhouse steps. Their faces blank. Waiting. I backed away from the album. And that's when I saw the mirror behind the counter. I wasn't in it. No reflection. Just the diner. Empty. As if I was no longer occupying the same space as everything else. Like I was being phased out. Erased. Deprecated. I staggered out the door, the sky dimming fast now, slipping into a kind of artificial dusk. The world had lost its natural light, as if someone had turned the sky to grayscale. And then I heard something I hadn't heard since I arrived. Footsteps. Behind me. I ran. I didn't look back, not right away. The footsteps behind me were deliberate. Not rushing. Not stumbling. Just pacing mine, steady, echoing off the too clean pavement. Like they didn't need to catch me. They only needed to follow. I sprinted toward where my car had been. The gravel path. The edge of the woods. But when I reached the corner where the road should have started, it wasn't there. Just more houses. Same hedges. Same front doors. Same porch lights. The town had folded in on itself. Like it had rewritten the map again, closing the last open loop. I dropped to my knees, breath ragged. I looked up, and every window around me was filled with faces. Silent. Observing. Not angry. Not sad. Just there. Present. Trapped. I pulled out the phone one last time. The screen flickered on. Just a single line now. You are part of the system. The map app opened by itself. A blinking dot marked my position. In the center of the gray zone. Where there should be nothing. Then the label beneath it updated. One word. Archived. The phone shut off. Permanently. The wind stopped. And the world held its breath. I stood, not because I thought I could escape, but because there was nowhere else to go. The footsteps stopped behind me. I turned. It wasn't a person. It was a shape. Faint. Shifting. Almost like a tear in the air, like static in the shape of a man. Its outline vibrated softly, as if it didn't quite belong to this version of reality. And then it stepped forward, into me. Not at me. Into me. The air folded. I felt cold, sharp pressure behind my eyes. The world inverted itself, and for a moment, I wasn't in the town. I was watching it. From above. From outside. From somewhere else. And then. Nothing. I don't know how long it's been. Maybe you'll find this story on a forum, or tucked into a file somewhere it doesn't belong. A backup from a system purge. Some archived post not meant to be read. But if you're ever driving, and you see a blank spot on the map, a place where roads should be, but aren't, don't go there. Some places aren't hidden. They're removed. And sometimes they remember who used to be part of them.